well, where I'm sitting, it's good afternoon, but hello to you all. This broadcast on the Row Perfect YouTube channel is by me, Duncan Holland. I've been a rowing coach for 40-ish years now, including spells in both New Zealand, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and Britain. Coached at all sorts of levels, from beginners to masters to international, to world champs and Olympics. What I'm going to present to you today is some of my ideas about how to row well, but also, I think, more importantly, how to teach good rowing. Now, if you look in the notes below the YouTube screen, there is a link which takes you to a document which is my description of how I think rowing should be done to row. And alongside that is a description from an outside point of view, a coach's point of view, or an athlete looking at their own videos point of view. There are some notes he should be feeling at the time when he or she is in that particular position. And then there are some checkpoints. So further through this, I'd suggest that you use that link and get yourself a copy of that document. This will be in the form of a PowerPoint presentation. There'll be slides coming through, and very shortly you'll stop seeing me and see some of the slides. Great, now here we go. So, rowing technique, self-explanatory. I'm Duncan Holland, and Awestruck is the trade name which I work under. What I'm going to do today, on the next slide, I'm going to review briefly my model for good rowing. I'm going to talk about how to row well. I'm going to talk about how to coach good rowing. Now, that rowing is continuous. Rowing is non-stop, rowing is rhythmical, rowing is smooth. I've got various sketches here of points through the stroke because from an analytical point of view, it's much easier to take fixed points, but rowing doesn't stop, ever. So, not much discussion about this at the catch, which I call drive one, to emphasize that there isn't a fixed position, it's just a moment in time. There we are with the knees up under the armpits, the shins vertical, the lower back in a strong position, and so on. Very standard stuff. And again, if you refer back to the document which you got through the link, it goes into this in more detail. The early part of the drive, the legs push, the seat moves, the back holds firm, the arms hang straight and loose, and power is transferred from the foot stretcher through the body and to the handle. The legs keep driving. At some stage about the middle of the drive, the body starts swinging, which is actually a gluteus and hamstring muscle contraction rather than the back. But we talk about moving the back. And further on, as the legs finish, the back is swinging towards the finish position and the arms are starting to draw. Standard stuff. And a finish position, the legs are straight, the elbows are past the body is leaning back to some degree, it's adjustable from crew to crew, and the handle is at a height where the blade is still, all blades, if it's a sculler, are still in the water. The start of the recovery is that the blade must come out of the water, and the pictures are drawn of a athlete, outside fingers tap down. If it's a sculler, both hands go down. The hands lead away from the body. This is a very important point, which I will belabor a bit more later in the presentation. Body stays still as the arms move, the handle moves away, and until the arms are approaching straight. As the arms straighten, the body swings over the hips, the pelvis rotates, and the knees soften. So there's a definite sequence of the finish, the arms and then the body, and then lastly the seat move. As we slide forward, you see the arrows there, the knees, the head, the body is moving forward, the knees are bending, the body is approaching the knees, foot stretcher, and from early on in the recovery, the back position and shape doesn't change. The back reaches the catch position early in the recovery, and the athlete slides forward, merely packing up as he gets closer to the catch. As the catch approaches, the hands for a sculler, the inside hand for a sweep or athlete, square the blades. And I've gone on to the next slide, just a fraction too early, but I'm sorry about that. From that position towards the end of the recovery, the athlete arrives at what we call drive one. The catch is made, and away we go through the sequence again. Now, here we have a color-coded slide, and there are 4 points. The model, my model of how to row, and I must give credit here to all the people with whom I've worked and who coached me with rowing. It's very little of it is original. You could describe it as pretty standard New Zealand rowing. Those slides are in black and the pictures are in black and white. As we go through this presentation, there are 3 slides referring to each stage of the stroke, each snapshot. The model is on each of them in black. Then there's a blue slide and a yellow slide. The green slide refers to what to look for at that part of the stroke. The blue slide refers to what is required to perform this part of the stroke correctly, effectively. And the yellow slide refers to ways of practicing that. So to reiterate, the black is the model, how you want your crew to row. Now, my rowing is I believe, a good one, but there are other models out there. You choose what model your crew should row. Coaching should stay the same. Look at your crew, see whether it matches the model. Think about what is the most important improvement we can make today, this week, this year. What do we need, what do we have to achieve that improvement? And then how do we practice it? So we'll move on to the first slide in the sequence. And here we are back at the catch at our old friend drive one. And what should we be looking for to assess whether this part of the stroke is being done well? Powerful point, important point, always look at the boat first. To quote the great Richard Tonks, it isn't dressage. It doesn't actually matter directly what's happening to the boat. So at the catch, is the boat running as the boat goes through the catch? Does the stern of the boat stay up? Is there a noticeable check? Is it running on sweetly? Look at the catch. If the boat is through the catch, then your crew must be doing the catch, or catching nicely, and maybe you don't need to change anything there. Maybe something else you could change which would have more effect. So the boat should be running on. The blades should be close to the water at the catch. It's hard to get a well-timed, neat, effective catch if you're attacking the water from half a metre up. Skying. Blades timed to catch with full extension, I say there. That's the blades reaching the point of furthest arc around the boat or past the boat. At the same time, your seats are at the catch position. Handle height at the catch. When the blades are in the water, level at the top of the blade, level with the water, where's the handle? If it's way up, your athlete's got a problem because she can't complete the catch properly. Now, so we've looked at the boat, we've looked at the blades. Now we're going to start looking at the bodies. Last, we're looking at the bodies. What sort of shape is the back of the athlete in? If you look at the picture, there's a thick black line down in the lumbar region, down where the pelvis and the low back are, normally in the dark part of the row suit, unless you've got a fancy modern row suit that's the same color all over. That part of the back should be long and rotated towards the stern of the boat. What a physio would call a neutral pelvis, the pelvis rotated to be in line with the back. The back shape should stay constant throughout the catch. So as you approach the catch, take the catch, move off from the catch, the back shape should stay constant. And knee movement from the catch is something I look at a lot. And in the boat, coaching boat, I get it 3/4 aft, looking down the line of knees. And the first thing that moves after the blade is in the water should be the knees. The knees should go down away from the catch together. So to reiterate, we're looking at one part of the stroke, in this case the catch, and we have in our head how it should look. You can refer back to the document you got on the link, and you know what it should feel like to the athletes. The boat behaving, you look at where the blades are, you look at where the handle height is, and then finally you look at the athletes. So we move on to the next color. We're now into the blue. And because the wild blue yonder, there's nothing there. Is how do we achieve this position, this movement? Think, what do we need to achieve it? Very first point is you have to set the feet correctly in the boat. If the feet are too high, the athlete will struggle to pack up properly. If the feet are too low, she may move over past a strong position. If they're too flat, it might be too easy to get to the catch. If they're too steep, similarly to too high, it makes it hard to get to the catch. The feet have to be correctly set. The athlete needs to be strong and stable in the core, in the middle of the body, able to hold the pelvis in neutral. 15, 16-year-old boy simply can't get a good catch because he can't get into the right position, because his legs have grown, his hamstrings are short, his back is stiff. He just cannot get into the right position. So it's like trying to teach a fish to fly. If the athlete can't achieve the right position, you're never going to achieve the right catch. So you have to go away and do something else, which we'll talk about later. The athlete has to sit tall, and by tall, I mean tall like a dancer, tall by lifting the top of your head rather than tall like a soldier on guard. In sweep oar, you have to rotate the shoulders to be parallel with the handle. Your arms tend to be the same length, so if you want both arms to be straight, the shoulders have to rotate. To scull, you have to be prepared to get your hands outside the boat and open your arms, open your chest wide. And you have to grip the handle well. Now, things like the grip, I'm going to say you have to grip it well. Other places on the site, you can find exact descriptions of what I think a good grip is. And in sweeping, I believe that the handle, the blade is placed by using the outside hand. That's the hand with the leverage. The inside hand's busy squaring up. The outside hand puts the blade in the water. So those are things you need to be able to do in order to have a good catch. I'm sorry, here I've left off sculling. Again, you place with the arms. It's not a grab, it's not a shoulder lift, it's a placing with the arms. Now, this is a really interesting bit. How do we practice this? So we have a model. We have tips in the green about what to look for. And we have a list of things in the blue of what you need to get to having a good catch. Now, how do we practice this? Obviously, the boat doesn't need to practice. So we look at the body here. We have to have a good core program. I've said we need to have a strong core. Your athletes won't have a strong core naturally. You have to have a good core program. Again, there's plenty of advice out there. There are all sorts of wonderful professionals, Pilates teachers and physios and gym trainers. But if your athletes don't have a good core program, they won't be able to do these things. They have to be flexible. And if you're dealing, as I said, with 15, 16-year-old boys, you might have to be patient. You might have to wait a year to get a good catch because you have to wait until they can reach the right sort of positions. And here is a list of the exercises that I would use, exercises or drills, as some people call them. And again, if you don't understand some of my descriptions, as in what is a stand-up, is it a comedian, and what's an Aussie slap, I can be contacted through the website, or you can look elsewhere on the net. So there are some specific exercises based around the front of the stroke, the catch, to work on that. Okay, now we move on to the next phase. So drive 2, the blades are in the water, and the dry phase of the stroke has started. So what do we look for? We look at the boat. Remember, always look at the boat first. The boat should be starting to accelerate. Once the blades are in the water, the boat should be accelerating. And you can see that by the behavior of the bow and the stern. The stern starts to lift. The bow starts to run on a bit differently. And if you have some modern fancy electronics, they can measure it for you. The blades need to be in the water at full extension. Experienced coach eye or video can show you this. Goes very well with video. Get some video of the athlete's seat approaching the catch and the blade approaching the water, and go frame by frame and count the frames between when the seat stops and when the blade's in the water. You can then work out by the number of frames a second how long it actually takes, which is quite a long time, a surprisingly long time. Blades need to be buried to get a good drive. Buried but not under a landslide, under a water slide. Just to the top of the blade, level with the top of the water. The arms stay extended and relaxed. You're hanging, you're not pulling at this stage. The back shape stays constant. Hang off the handles. Coaches talk about hanging a lot. The shoulders and upper body are relaxed. Now, what do we have to achieve a good drive? Well, we've talked about rowing being a continuous cycle. If you fluff the catch, the drive won't be good. So to get a good drive, you have to time the catch correctly. You have to know the sequence. And we talked, and the document about the model talks about the sequence, the legs, the back, the arms, which is the standard athletic sequence. And that can be easy to learn on a dry, stable platform on land rather than in a wet, wobbly boat out on some unpleasant bit of water. Ergs are a great teaching tool for this. Learning how to do squats, learning how to jump are all very good. If you take a bunch of novices and say, righto, do a squat jump and watch them, video them, you'll see all sorts of variances in the sequence of driving, of how the legs and the back move. And if you want your crew to move well together, then the sequence has to be the same. So teach the sequence, legs, back, and then arms. Now, that raises a very important point, which I've let come up naturally. I talked there about teaching the sequence. I was talking about teaching a positive, teaching how to do something. There was no mention of correcting a fault or correcting a bad action. It was teaching a good action. Right. To get a good drive, sounds very basic, but you have to push on the foot stretcher. And a surprising number of athletes pull on the handle, lift with the shoulders rather than pushing on the foot stretcher. Those who have been to good weightlifting gyms know that weightlifting teachers say, push the floor away. Same thing for us, push the stretcher away. Hang off the handle. Hang as if you were hanging on a pull-up bar. Your shoulders and upper back must be relaxed. And last but very much not least, you have to hold your core firm. If you're pushing on your feet, using your legs to push, the load is in your hands. If your core is floppy, not much power will get transmitted. And we move on now to how do we practice that? Every rowing crew in the world does the build from the finish exercise, arms only, arms and body, quarter slide, half slide, and so on. Do it from the catch. Do the first little bit of the catch, and then a little more and a little more, building, practicing the sequence. Practice on land, well executed, squats, jumps, lifts. Make sure your athletes are coached in how to squat and jump. If you don't have the time or the expertise to do it, find someone who can. And one of my favorite exercises is the catch and release drill. Again, you can find that if you look. Now, you'll notice I'm accelerating, as boats should, as we move through, because I don't want to read everything in the presentation. You can all read, but the real point is the sequence. Establish a model. Have an idea. If you're a group of athletes, decide how you want to row. If you're a dictatorial coach, decide how your crew's going to row. If it's a democracy, the coach and crew decide how you're going to row, and then agree on the model. And then you start saying, right, middle of the drive, here we are, drive 3, what are we looking for? The boat's starting to surge, the bow's coming up, the stern's moving on, the blades are well covered, the handles are the right height, the blades are in the water but not deep, not doing what I would call an obelix row where the handle goes high and the blade goes deep. The athletes sit tall, the legs are together, and so on and so on. There are various things you can look at. You can look at them for yourself with your eye and with video. Now, what do we need to do to achieve this? What do we need to have? We have to be strong. Fast rowers have to be strong. You have to have power. You have to have strong legs and core. You should be able to feel a rhythm in the leg drive. It's not a stamp or a kick. It's a squeeze with rhythm. The feet push, the seat starts moving, and then the seat accelerates as the handle comes in. A description of that is to drive as if you were jumping. Again, if you're trying to jump to slam dunk a ball through a basketball hoop, you don't stamp on the floor, you squeeze and leap. A more measured way of saying the same thing, accelerate as you move down the slide. The seat should get faster. The handle should get faster. Ways of practicing this. Short strokes, so half slide and three-quarter slide, or building from the catch. One of my favorite exercises is back-only rowing, where the arms and the legs stay straight. There's variations in the power and the drive, and so on. There are lots of ways, but don't just do the exercise because it's the exercise you used to do when your coach taught you, which she probably learned from the coach who taught her. Do exercises deliberately. I want to improve the middle of the drive. My crew aren't moving the bodies on in the middle of the drive the way they should be. So I'll select an exercise, back-only rowing, which teaches and reinforces that good movement. Note again, I didn't correct a fault. I taught a better movement. And so on we go through the drive 4. I'm going to skip quickly through this. We're approaching the catch. legs are nearly down, bodies are past the vertical, and the handles are moving. The arms are bending, and we have a list here of how the boat's running, what the blades are doing, what the bodies are doing, and what the other parts of the body are up to. What do we need to achieve this? Again, we need to be strong. There's no way around that. To row fast, you need to be strong. To row fast for a long time, you need to be strong and fit. So you need to be able to stay being strong for as long as your race is. You need to learn the proper sequence, the legs, back, shoulders, elbows of a normal drive. You need to keep pushing against the stretcher. Something I find very useful is to remind athletes to push on the stretcher as they approach the finish. And I actually teach them to point their feet. You think about jumping. An athlete doesn't jump with their feet parallel to the floor. They push off and they point their toes as they push off for that last bit of spring. Same thing in a rowing boat. Point your toes. Keep pushing the knees down. The handles should keep accelerating. Further through the stroke you go, the faster the handles should be moving. And here are things you can do to practice this. You can build a stroke from the catch. You can have a short finish rowing. Again, learn and practice proper sequences and jumping and lifting. Talking about lifting, I'm a firm believer in lifting weights but it must be properly taught, properly done, and properly supervised. Particularly young people need to be taught the proper technique before they try to lift anything heavy. If you're trying to accelerate the handles through the stroke, you should look to try and increase the pressure through the stroke. It may not actually be possible, but you're looking to have more emphasis on power the further through the stroke you go. Here we are at the finish. Again, I call it drive 5 to emphasize the fact that rowing is a continuous cycle. The boat is running fast as you get to the water. It should be running fast if you're rowing well, if you're following the model. The blades are still locked and buried. Really important on this. If you look here at our athlete here, he has his elbows and his wrists and his knuckles at the same height, and we're assuming his blade is in the water. The pelvis is in neutral, which means the pelvis is lined up with the lower spine. The body's sitting tall. We could talk for hours about how far you lean back to 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 5 degrees or 15 degrees. You choose. Lean back a little bit. The actual degree of lean doesn't really matter. The elbows are past the body. I talked about the horizontal forearm. And if asked exactly where, I would say that the handle should touch the first rib. So the knuckle of your outside hand, or both knuckles in the case of a sculler, should touch your first rib if the boat's set up properly. How do we achieve this? The boat. The boat must be rigged properly. Really instructive. Get a crew, okay, push off from the pontoon, sit at the finish position, blades buried in the water, and look where the handles are. Most young people need to have the handle somewhere up around their throat to get the blade in the water, because we put them in boats that are too big. Relatively often, masters crews who are possibly not as slender as they used to be, if the blades are at the right height in the water, there's very little room between their thighs and the handle. Get the right size boat and rig it to suit your athletes. And the measure is handle at rib height. From the athlete's point of view, to sit here, you have to keep pressing on the stretcher, have to keep pressure down on the soles of your feet. The knees have to be down against the slides. Same as the previous slide, the pelvis is neutral and sit tall, and the elbows go past the body. We talk about arm draw, in fact, most of it is shoulder draw. It's opening the shoulders, moving the elbows. The arms actually do very little. Exercises to make your biceps bigger are for the beach rather than for rowing. Again, elbows wrists, first knuckles in a horizontal line. Ways of practicing this, good list there, pretty standard exercises. I'm a big fan of feet out rowing. In order to sit at the finish and finish a stroke without having your feet tied in, you have to have a good core and be able to use it. So have your athletes learn how to sit there, pressing their feet down and sitting still is a good way to teach how to use their core. And we're going to start to recover. Rowing, of course, how many times have I said this so far this afternoon? Rowing is a cycle. Rowing is continuous. And we drive and we recover, and there's a rhythm to it. And recovery takes longer than the drive. So, start of the recovery is the blades being lifted out of the water by the outside hand for a sweep oar person, or both hands for a sculler, tapping the handle down, wrists stay flat, blades come out. So what do we look for? We look for the boat to keep running. If we don't perform the finish correctly, the boat will slow down, and you'll see that in a check in the bow. The bow will drop, or the stern will drop. The blades come out of the water together and close to square, rather than turning out through the hole. Try to get the blades to actually come clear of the water. The wrists stay flat. The body stays strong. There's a great tendency to slump at the finish. As the handles go down, the body goes down, and you end up sitting like a beanbag rather than like an athlete. What do we need to achieve this position, this action? Arms have to tap down. The wrists have to stay flat. Important point there. Fingers feather the blades, not the wrists. So the outside wrist in a sweep oar stays flat. The grip doesn't change. The body stays strong. How do we practice it? Tap down, so sitting at the finish, lifting the blades in and out. Tap down and feather, and the build-ups to proper roll-ups. Outside arm only rowing is a good exercise to teach the outside hand to control the blade. Square blade is a very standard and a wonderful exercise. And where do we go next? Further through the sequence, and if you refer to the model, and there's very little disagreement about this around the world, is the hands go and then the body swings over. And the transition from one to the other is smooth and relaxed. It's not a soldier doing a rifle drill, arms straight, body over. So arms heading towards straight, the body swings and follows, one movement blending into the other. What does it look like? The boat's fast. The boat itself is actually faster than when you just came out of the water. Not the whole system, but the boat is. The bow starts to come up a little. The blades are feathered by now and clear of the water. The body stays still. Very important point here, what is often described as sit and separate. Let the handles move away from the body while the body stays still. Further points there. So you can get yourself from the model of things you should see early in the recovery. What do we have to achieve this? Learn to finger feather rather than wrist feather. And sweep, the outside wrist stays flat. The body stays strong. The arms extend to nearly straight. And this is a much discussed point. Handles should go around the finish at the same speed as the end of the drive. So the handle's coming into the body at a given speed, round the finish and out, like a point on a bicycle chain. Round and out. It's after the arms are nearly straight that speed changes happen. Things we can do to practice this. Pause the body at the finish. It's easy. Pause with the arms extended, single strokes there. A double finish, known in Cambridge as cutting the cake, where the arms draw in, tap out and feather, straighten the arms, staying on the feather, arms are bent again, and away you go. and other such exercises which can be found. And this is where I'm going to stop going through in detail. You can follow this through yourself in the presentation, but note the sequence. You should have a model clearly in your mind of how you want the crew to row. Whether you're an athlete or a coach, it should be a clear model. It can be like someone else, though better is to have your own way of describing it, but you can reference other crews. You can find a crew on YouTube at the World Championships who rows particularly well and say, we want to row like that. You can go to a guru. However, you have a model. You then coach it by taking a point in the stroke. How are things going? And the first thing you do is look at how the boat is behaving. You look at how the oars are behaving, and then you look at the bodies. You make a decision. What's the most important change we can make? Or is this good enough for now? Is there somewhere else in the stroke we should intervene? Then you look at, okay, to make that change, what do we have to have? Can we do it? Is the boat properly rigged? Do we have to re-rig the boat? Are our athletes strong enough, lithe enough, lean enough to do this? Okay, if they're not, then we have to work on the bodies before we can achieve that. And then you prescribe an exercise, a series of exercises or drills to practice this skill. And then you do it lots and lots of times. Have fun.